Hello, everyone. Today we're here to learn how to write Python from the spreadsheet. With us is Jacob Diamond Reivich, co-founder of Mito, and he will talk to you about that.
Hey, everybody. Excited to be here. I'll get started in a second. Just some time to trickle in. Looks like we've got 24 of us. But I'm excited to be speaking with you all. Today we're going to talk about spreadsheets, Python. My team has developed some specific software that help people transition from spreadsheets to Python. So we'll move into that for sure. I'll do some demos. Also talk about some other tools that can be really helpful in that sphere. But I'd love to make this as conversational as possible. I think a good amount of time. Obviously not using the entire time, but I would love to have this flow as a conversation. But it looks like we have some people joining. It's great. Yeah, we'd love to have this flow as a conversation, talk about how you're using spreadsheets, how you're using Python, how people that you're working with, colleagues, maybe employees of yours are making that transition. I can talk about how we've helped a lot of companies do that. Question? Is the audio still bad? Sorry, is it a bit better? Okay. I will, yeah, if it gets worse, let me know. I'll go off for a second. Yeah, it's great. Okay. Let me, hold on. I'm going to try and put some AirPods on.
Is this better? Can you hear me better now?
Yes, it's great now.
Oh, perfect. All right. Go AirPods. This is a good plug for AirPods. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, it's great to be speaking with you all. Yeah, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the transition from spreadsheets to Python, some tooling I've built to do that with my team at Mito, but some other great tools out there that help do that, and just the process in general. I guess before I jump into the actual tooling, would love to hear from anyone out there. Is this a process you're seeing happening for yourself and your company, people who are using Excel, using Google Sheets, but are looking to get into programming specifically in Python? I'd love to hear that's something you're experiencing and how that's going. Things, successes you've seen at that, struggles you've seen at that, the types of workflows you're looking to transition. I'd love to just hear from anyone if that's something they're experiencing right now. So that's more people trying. Okay, cool. All right, well, yeah, would love to jump into more experiences later. Again, I want to make this as conversational as possible, but I'll jump over to our actual software and show you how you can use it. So let me share my screen real quickly here. So this is Mito. This is the software my team has built to help people go from spreadsheets to Python and really bridge that gap in terms of maybe you have a data analyst who is using really large sets of data in Excel and can't figure out exactly how to work with that in a sustainable way. Excel can obviously be really slow on large data sets. Mito helps people access these large data sets inside Python. And then still interact with a spreadsheet that generates the equivalent Python for you. So that's the high level of what Mito is. It's a spreadsheet interface inside Python. And every edit you make in the interface is going to generate the equivalent Python for you down here. So I'll do a quick demo really fast. And then we can go through more feature by feature and talk about how that transition happens. But I just want to give you a high level demo. So first, what I have is I've imported some data. This is all in Python again. So I have this column here. Let's say, for example, I want to add a column here. Click add column, and I want to rename this column to just new column. We come down here, we see we've generated this code that added the column and renamed this column to new. So there's two steps in this one line of code. And also all the code we're generating is auto-documented. And then if I put a formula in this column here, so we can use actual spreadsheet formulas. Let's say I want to take the month value out of the date here. We can do that. We have the month, and we come down and we see that we've generated the month value here, this formula for month down here. So again, everything we do in the spreadsheet is going to generate the equivalent Python for us. So you can imagine it's like you're using Excel or Google Sheets, but everything you do is writing Python. And we're inside a Jupyter environment. I'll talk about environments in a second. I just want to give you a quick high-level demo. Let's say also that we want to just make a quick pivot table. So we have these months here. This is some stock data for Tesla. So let's say I have the open values here, and I want to pivot. And I'm going to do the month, which is the new column, as my row, and as my value, I'm going to put the open value, and we'll just do the mean. So this is the average open value for the stock. We get the pivot table, and we come down here, and we get the code for that. So again, everything we do in Mito is going to generate the equivalent Python for us. So if you're a spreadsheet user, it's a great way to interact with data in a familiar environment, which is a spreadsheet, and generate the equivalent code. If you're a Python user, as you can see, this is a much faster way of writing Python for a lot of people. This code might take you a few minutes to write. Maybe if you go to Stack Overflow or Google or something. But in this software here in Mito, it only takes a few seconds to write. So that's the high level of Mito. It's you interact with the spreadsheet and it writes the code for you. So it's a spreadsheet interface inside your Python environment. I definitely want to dig into like more of the features and more of the transition in a second. But any questions on the high level of the tool, really quick? Or any thoughts or reactions? Cool, all good. Definitely let me know if people, looks like we have one question. Someone said, Ivana says it is amazing and interesting. Thank you, Ivana. I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll definitely, hopefully it continues to amaze you. I will keep going here. Great, okay. Cool. So let's backtrack a little bit and move back to just sort of, I'm sure many of you are knowledgeable about Python environments, but if you're maybe just a full-time spreadsheet user, it might not be something you're so aware of. So the environment we're in right here is called Jupyter Lab. I'm sure you're probably all aware with the Jupyter Suite. You're probably aware with the Jupyter Suite, open source environment for doing Python. It's the #1 place for doing Python. I'll show you the Jupyter website real quick if you're not familiar. Here, good plug for JupyterCon. Here you can access all the different Jupyter environments. For organizations that are fully in spreadsheets, we definitely recommend Jupyter as a good first step for starting to transition people to Python. It's free, it's really well maintained, and you can get started with Jupyter Notebooks, which people can download locally, or Jupyter Lab, which can also be local, or Jupyter Hub, which is a hosted version of Jupyter Notebooks. So if you want someone who's like centrally managing people's access or things like that, Jupyter Hub is a great option. But what it provides is this notebook environment where we can write Python. And Mito really slots right into that and allows people to start using Python inside this environment, but through a spreadsheet interface. So I'll go to, this is the Mito documentation. So the first thing you might want to do is install Mito. This link here, docs.trymito. I'll put this in the chat just so you all have it. Here we go. It looks like, yeah, there's the chat. Yeah, so in terms of installing Mito, this is how we do it. We come to the documentation, click installing Mito here, and it's only a few lines of Python code. So you only need to run this and this. And so what you would do is you just take this, you copy it, come back into your environment. This is again, this is Jupyter. We could make a new notebook and just run this. I won't run you all through it. Oh, oops, I should use this. when you're in a notebook, you have to, there we go. This is gonna run, oh, sorry, I'm not sure why this isn't running. Well, it should work for you. I think it's probably because I already have Mito installed. It's not working, but you would need to just run this line of code and then run this line of code. Oh, we have another question. Very beginner friendly system. Not, yes, definitely a super beginner friendly tool. Yeah, it's really designed for beginners to be able to use Python pretty quickly. So, what was I going to say? So yeah, so all you have to do is just run these 2 lines of Python code, and then that's going to open up the Jupyter environment for you. So running this actually installs Jupyter Lab for you. So you just have to have Python installed on your computer, which is super easy to do. And then you run these 2 lines of code, either in a notebook or in your terminal, and that will bring up a blank Mito sheet. And I'll show you what that looks like. So a blank Mito sheet is just, so this is how you call the Mito sheet. You need to import the Mito sheet package, and then Mito sheet.sheet. And then we get a blank Mito sheet, which is this. And from here, you can import files. So in terms of importing data, this is something a lot of people struggle with to do in Python, especially when it's their first time. In Excel, obviously, you're just opening you're used to, or Google Sheets, you're used to opening your data sort of in the file. Like maybe you're pulling from some API, but that's pretty advanced for an Excel user. So you're sort of used to having Excel as sort of the data structure as an Excel file. In Python, obviously, it's a little bit different. You can pull from a lot of different places. So you can bring in local files, you could pass in data frames that already exist, or you could pull from like an external data source. Obviously, Python's really good for connecting to APIs, connecting to data sources you might have, doing web scraping, for example, are all things that are really helpful in Python and allow users to access data. But then once they have that data, they struggle to work with it, I think, because of the syntax. And so it's often where Mito comes in. But Mito also helps make that data ingestion process a lot easier. So in terms of importing, we can do one of a few ways. So I can either import a current data frame I'm working with. So for example, I would come here, there aren't any data frames in this file, but I would be able to search all the data frames in my file. One thing that a lot of people who are new to Python struggle with is when you're in Excel, you can sort of see all your data at the same time. You understand, okay, these tabs at the bottom of my sheet, I know I have 5 data sets I'm working with, for example. In Python, you can have sort of data frames hidden throughout your notebook. So it goes up and down as opposed to more like rectangular space. So you might not realize you actually have data sets in your notebook that you're not aware of. So in this menu here, you can search all of your data sets, df1, df2, you will get a list of all the data sets that you have, all the data frames that you have, and you can just quickly pass those in. So you don't have to worry about finding the data sets in your notebook and sort of manage all your data sets in your Python environment in right here. And that's good for new spreadsheet users, but it's also nice for people already using Python. It's a faster way to access data and manage the data sets you have. It looks like we have another question. Oh. Okay. So yeah, we can import data frames, but also what we have, and this is maybe more common for beginner spreadsheet users, is we can import Excel files and CSV files. So I'm going to import some files here. You can search your entire local file system through this. I'm going to take in, I think I have some ramen data. Yeah, so this is data about ramen restaurants, and we're going to analyze this a little bit. So I'll import this ramen data here. Again, when we import that, it generates the code down here that does that import step for us. And also here, it tells us about the size of our data set. So we get a really nice, just quick snapshot of how large our data set is. So we have about 2,500 rows and 7 columns. And again, when we do this import, it generates the code that, it auto documents this code that generates import. So one of the key things with Mito and lots of these tools that bring people from spreadsheets to Python is, you want to bring people over and have them be able to access code, but you also want to be able to write clean, well-documented code. So as we'll see here, the code we're writing in Mito is pretty optimized, meaning we're bringing things together. And also there's auto documentation as well. So that's really helpful. What was I going to say? The other thing we can do here in terms of importing is you could connect to some external data sources as well. That's more in the enterprise stuff that we do. But if you're interested in connecting directly to Snowflake, for example, if you want to reach out to me, I can definitely help you get stuck with that. Any questions about data importing, how that works with Mito? A lot of people use Mito as sort of the access point to their data as they're using Python. Any questions about that? We got one question. The question from the nod says, can you customize import specifics encoding, for example? And then the question is in the free version. So can you customize import specific encoding? So I'm not sure exactly. I think let me try and answer that and let me know if this does answer your question. So as we import a file, so I can import a second data frame here. Good thing to show you is you can import multiple data frames, and as you do that, it will they will appear as separate tabs. So oops, I'm doing a data frame here. I'm gonna import a separate file. So let's import that Tesla file again that we have from the other one, Tesla data. So we can do configure here, where you can select specific encodings. You can add a delimiter, CSV, for example. Like currently it's comma separated. You could do parentheses separated or colon separated, for example. And then you can also skip some invalid lines if you want to. And then down here, you can reset to automatically detect parameters. So yeah, this is all in the open source free version. One thing I should have mentioned is that, so in terms of Mito, there's our base version is it's free, but it's also open source. So you can actually go and see our code, which I'll show you. Maybe I'll take a second actually to show you right now. If I go to GitHub and then Mito mono repo here, this is our code base here. So you can see some really helpful links, all the different folders. If you're interested in sort of the back end of how it's built, I can talk about a little bit of that more maybe at the end, because that would be interesting to specific people. But yeah, we're really into being open source and contributing to other open source projects and just open source communities. So you can see everything here and contribute if you want to. We'll always take contributors. We're having a meeting with someone today is going to help add some new functions, I think. So something we're always interested in doing. Let me close this. Okay, so yeah, I hope that answers your questions. That yes, you can use these settings here to delineate and make sure that the stuff you're bringing in is helpful. So I'll close that. And as we see, we now have the second data frame here. So I'm going back, I'm going to work with Raman. So the first thing I might want to do is just understand my data set a little bit better. And we have a lot of features that will help you do EDA, I think, or exploratory data analysis. I think for a lot of spreadsheet users, this is some of the work they're trying to do initially in Python. Is sometimes exploring a data set, a very large data set, for example, in Excel can take a lot of time, even just the scrolling. Python can be a better environment for that. But you really have to get used to looking at syntax, printing out summary statistics and things like that. And that can take a lot of time. So a lot of people who want to just get into Python to start doing their analysis much more quickly, Mito could be a better way to do that. I do want to mention about the data size for 1 second. So this is 2,500 rows and 7 columns. This is pretty small. This is just a small CSV I brought in for an example. Mito is built on top of Pandas data frames. So what you're dealing with here, what you're interacting with here is a data frame that we've built an interface on top of. What that means is you can access incredibly large data sets with Mito, sizes that you definitely could not access in spreadsheets or Excel, Google Sheets, or things like that. So like we have users in our community who work with 5 million lines of data in Mito, for example, and have no issue with it. So definitely encourage you to use some large data sets. And I think that's one of the main use cases for why people are going from spreadsheets to Python is that the data sizes that are accessible in spreadsheets just don't work for a lot of enterprises. For a lot of users right now, you need to be working with larger sets of data, and that's only going to continue. So the migration to Python is not something that we're creating. It's something that is happening already, and we're just helping to facilitate that and hopefully make that easier for a lot of people. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to mention the data sizes. So now let's explore the data set a little bit. So these is some integer. This is just a review number. We have the different brands for this ramen. We have the variety, we have the style. We have the country that it's from, how many stars, I believe, out of 5 that I got. That might be a good question to ask, for example, is like, it looks like we have all these values here, these star values, but we don't really know what, like what's the rating out of, is it 1 to 5, is it 1 to 10? So we can make a pretty good guess at that just by going here. This is our column menu. You can see all things about the column. I'm gonna go to the summary stats. And yeah, it looks like, well, these are a little bit out of order, unfortunately, but it looks like about the 0 to 5 is the range. If we go to the values column here, we can get a better understanding. So it looks like, if I scroll down, it looks like the highest value is 5, and then the lowest value is about a 0. So we see we're on a 0 to 5 scale here. And it's nice, this value here, this column here will tell you all the unique values in this column. Again, this is just a few lines of Python, but for beginner users, you know, this can take time. You have to go to, as I said before, Google, Stack Overflow, get that syntax in Mito. You don't have to worry about it. You just do it right here. And then as I come back here, we get the summary stats. So we have this frequency chart, and then we also get, since this is a string column, we get the count, how many values are in the column, how many unique values, what the top value was, what the frequency of that top value is, and then how many null values there are. There's 0. And this is a nice helpful thing because a lot of people, as they come in, I think a big piece of that transition from spreadsheets to Python is dealing with null values. It's a little bit of a different process in Excel, and the first thing you might want to do in Python is probably understand where your null values are. And if you have any, fortunately in this data set, we don't have any of those. So I'll close that. So yeah, again, back to the value tab, we can see all the different values. We can sort these. So again, this is an ascending value right now. We could put this in descending value if we wanted to. We could also put it in ascending occurrence. So we can see here that these values only occur once, and that's 0.04% of the total occurrences. And we could put these in descending occurrence. We can see, okay, these are the most common values. 4 is the most common value here, and that's about 14.88% of the data set. As I come back here, this is where we can start doing some manipulations to the column. So, and this is where we'll do a lot of the code generation. So these are things that a lot of people do to columns over and over again. It can be really time consuming when you're writing out these lines of code over and over. So I'll show you how you can do this in a pretty sustainable way. So for example, we have this column stars, which is a string right now. Let's say we wanted to make this an integer or a float, for example. We can just change it to a float. You know, in Mito, that's literally just a click of a button. We can also, and if I come down here, we'll see that we generated the code for that. So change star to float. If I were to change this back to integer, oops, actually can't do that because we're in a float. If I change this back to string, for example, we'd see that line of code we added went away. So we know that it's back at the base set. But if I change it back to float, then we get this here. And again, auto documented that. One thing I want to show you right now is that what we can do in Mito is we can undo and redo steps. So it's sort of like Control Z, like you have in Excel. So I'll undo this. We'll go back to a string, and the code will be gone. If I were to redo it, I'll go back to a float, and the code will be there. So let's go back to this menu. So we now have this as a float. I'll show you quickly. I'll just put this in ascending order. You can see there's some 3 null values here, and we get that code there. I'll put it in descending order, and we'll see that this changes. The code changes. And I'll just take this off, and now we're back at the base set of the data, and we'll see that code is gone. And the last thing is just the changing to float. So let me close this. Oh, sorry, I want to open this again because I want to show you filtering. So filtering, really common thing people are doing in Python. You know, Mito and Python generally are really good for taking a larger data set and bringing it down to a smaller data set. I think this is a workflow we see a lot in terms of if you want to, get a smaller data set to Excel. Mito can be a really good tool for that. You know, a lot of people, as I said before, can't access super large data sets in Python. So what they'll do is can't access super large data sets in Excel because of the limitations. You can only do about 1 million lines. So for example, one way that people will do it, use Mito, is bring in a data set from a database, for example, maybe from Snowflake, that is 7 million lines of data. use our filtering to filter it down to 100,000 lines of data that they really want, and then bring that data, export it back to Excel, which I'll show you how to do. But so if I add a filter here, let's say we want just the values that are greater than 4. So we'll see, put 4 here. We'll see this updates in real time. So it lets us know how many rows were removed here. So we can see that about 1,800 rows were taken out. Here's the current size of our data set, only 734 left. And if we come down here, we get the code for that filter that we ran. Now if I change this, I can update this in real time. So if I change this to 4.5, we see an update here. Now about 2130 rows are removed from the initial data set. And we come down here and we get, we see that's updated. So like this will update in real time. If you see me type here 4, we'll see that change to 4. See that to 5, change to 5. This data set will update in real time. And this button here will let us know, this purple highlight will let us know that we've updated, that we have a filter applied. Any questions about filtering, EDA, things like that? I think I've lost my. Okay, cool. Looks like we're good. All right, I'm sharing. Yeah, if people have any questions, put them in the chat, or feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question. I'd love to talk with some of you and learn about your experiences with Excel and Python as well. Cool. Okay, so let me close this, and we're gonna move now. Oops. We're gonna move now into the more data transformation stuff. So this is a lot of work that people are doing in spreadsheets currently, and they need to start doing this in Python. And we'll see how Mito can allow them to do that and hopefully save a lot of time. I actually think before I move into that, I'd love to just show, there's some other tools I'd love to highlight as well. I don't want to spend the whole time on Mito. So let me quickly go over to this one, which is called Lux. And this is these are both open source tools, so I'd love to support them and shout them out. Lux is a great package for visualizations. I'll show you some of my visualizations later, but what Lux does is it allows you to take a data frame and pass it through Lux, and Lux will automatically suggest visualizations for you. So you don't have to waste a lot of time writing visualization code. As you can see here, it'll just sort of predict what visualizations you might want to do, and then you can just click it and you can apply it. For beginner Python users, especially ones who are coming from Excel, but even for like more intermediate and advanced Python users, writing visualization code, as I'm sure many of you experienced, is a pretty painstaking and lengthy process. So this, having the ability to just still stay in a Python environment but have the visualizations automatically generated for you is pretty powerful. So I'm going to put this in the chat, and then Alex, maybe if you could send it to everyone, that would be great. There we go. But definitely want to shout out this package Lux. It's open source. You can download it pretty easily. Just like 2 lines of code here. And as again, you can see all these different types of visualizations that you can generate just with the click of a button. So yeah, really highly recommend using Lux for some of the graphing stuff. I'll also show you Mito's graphing as well. Mito is a little bit more of a customizable graphing interface, but Lux is really great for a lot of this stuff. So now back to Mito. And so again, we're going to talk about some transformations here. Transformation is really about cleaning, wrangling the data, making it more usable for your continued analysis. So I think I'm going to come up here. I want to highlight these menus up here. So this is where all the functionality lies. We have this toolbar, undo, redo, clear. What clear does is it brings our data set back to the base set of when we import it. So it's as if we made 0 edits to it. It can be really helpful for exploring. One of the things Mito is good at is doing some experimental analysis. Maybe you don't want to carry forward with that. You just want to try something out and then delete it all, go back and try something new. Really, build your understanding of the data iterate your processes. Mito is a good step for that. But a lot of the data frame wide stuff is going to be here. So, import data frames, import files. We talked about that. Exporting we'll show in a second. One thing we could do is we could duplicate a data frame. So we now have this copy here of ramen data set. We've made a duplicate. Here's the code for creating that duplicate right here. And so if we want to try one thing in here and try one thing in here on the same data set and then compare, we could totally do that. And it's very easy. I'm going to undo that because we don't do that anymore. We can also rename data frames. So, we have questions. Oh, that's it. Yeah. Okay, great. We can also rename data frames as well. So I have this data set here, and let's say I want to rename it. So this was called Tesla data. I could just call this Tesla if I want to be simple. I could just call this, we'll call this demo. For the demo we're doing, come down here, generate the code for that. We also can delete a full data frame if you want to do that, get rid of it, very simple. But now let's move into pivot tables, which can be a really powerful feature. So let me look at this data here. So we did a pivot table, so we'll do a few pivot tables. So we'll go back here, we'll do this same Tesla pivot table again. So again, I have, I'm gonna add a column here. I'm going to pull out the month function, and we're gonna use month here. We've done this, but I'll just use month. Here we go. Great, and now we can make a pivot table of this. So I'm gonna pivot, and I'm going to do month. Then for month down here, I'm going to do the average open value. So these are all the different aggregation types. So here we have the, this is opens a float, right? Okay, that works. Oh, sorry, I'm doing the wrong column here. I need to do open value. And there we go. Okay. So here we've made a pivot table. I think it's worth highlighting because a lot of workflows that we see in Excel that can be really slow are you may have some data and you make some pivot tables, and then you're just using the insights from that pivot tables. Maybe you're putting those pivot tables into, oh, we have a question. Is there duplicate data frame present 2 times? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Is the duplicate data present 2 times? I don't think so. So this is the data frame. This is the ramen data frame. This is the Tesla data frame, and this is the pivot table we've made off that. In the drop down. No. Oh, I see your question. You know what? I think my AirPods died. So let's take a 3-minute break. I'm gonna go grab new ones, and then we'll pick up in a second. I'll be right back. Hey everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you all right.
Pretty good, I hope. If these don't work well, I have another one. I have, unfortunately, a lot of AirPods, but if these don't work, let me know and I'll go grab them. But I'll get started. people are It's early here. I'm in I should tell people I'm in New Orleans in Louisiana. So it's well now it's 10, so it's not that early. I think most of you are in Europe. All right, I will get started back here. So yeah, Nanad, your question, I believe what your question is asking is when you're selecting your columns here, is that selecting from the duplicate data frames as well? So the first thing I want to point out is that we actually deleted the duplicate data frame. So we don't have that data frame anymore. So if you remember what you can delete any data frame. You can just click delete here. In this drop down, you can delete. But so these three data frames we have, this is the ramen data frame. This is our demo data set. And this is actually something I should have mentioned. When you do something like a pivot table, it actually creates a new data frame that is that pivot table. So if you come down here and look at the code, this is the code for the pivot table. You can see right here, we're creating this temporary data frame here, and then creating that, and then calling that data frame, that temporary data frame pivot table. So when you're selecting the columns for a pivot table, that pivot table is associated with only one of the data sets. So this is demo pivot. So this, because we were in this demo data set, which is the Tesla stock data set, and clicked pivot table on that data set while we were on that data set, the columns that we can choose from in this pivot table here are coming from this demo data set. So for example, if you had multiple data sets that you wanted to bring together and then make a pivot table off one of them, like maybe there are columns in one data set and the other data set that you want to use and incorporate into the pivot table, what you would want to do first is merge the data frames together, which we'll definitely get to in a second. It's actually a really common feature in Mito. So at a high level, the pivot table that you're creating is attached to the data set that you created the pivot table off of, where you click the pivot button, and that's where you can select columns from. Let me know if that answers your question. If it doesn't answer, then please type again, or come on the mic and ask the question if you'd like. But it's a good question. Definitely something people can get confused with in Mito. So we're in the pivot table. I think it's important to note that what we've done here is, so Nanad says, I think that I saw duplicate data frame present 2 times in data frame dropdown menu. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where that would happen. I think I saw the duplicate data present 2 times in data frame dropdown menu. Oh, do you mean here? So this is duplicate data frame. This is deduplicate data frame. Maybe this is what you're talking about. We'll get to that in a second. So what this allows us to do is take away duplicate values in our data set. Again, a really powerful thing that people can actually struggle to do in Excel and Python sometimes. Mito makes it pretty easy. And again, I'm just going to generate the code. So we'll get to that in a second. I think that might be what you're mentioning, but let's move on from there. And if we get there, I think we'll hopefully get to show you that. So anyways, we're back in the pivot table. What I've done down here is I've created the code for my pivot table. So I think really important to mention here, a lot of people struggle to do pivot tables in Python. There are sort of 2 ways of doing it. There's the pandas pivot method, which we're using. There's also the pandas group by method. Group by is actually a little bit more common for people who are writing code, but we recommend using pandas pivot. I think it's a little bit easier to use, and the code it generates is we think it's better. So that's why we use pandas pivot. If you needed it switched to pandas group by, you could reach out to us and we can help you set that up. But yeah, it's important that you can generate things. I think a lot of spreadsheet workflow is creating a bunch of pivot tables, but those pivot tables in Excel can take a really long time to load, as you might be aware of, or time to update. We have people who run their businesses off Excel, and a lot of pivot tables is how they're doing reporting, and it just takes 2 to 3 hours every time they want to update a large pivot table, and it's not a sustainable way of running your business, of having people in your organization analyze data. So Mito allows them to take those workflows and pretty immediately switch them into Python, and obviously get the code from them as well. So these pivot tables obviously will, on millions of data, will update incredibly quickly, just a few seconds. And as I mentioned before, Mito is a tool for spreadsheet users coming over to Python, but it's also a tool for beginner or intermediate and advanced Python users. Like, some of the best users in our community are PhDs in data science who use Python every day and have been for the last 10 years. And Mito is just a faster way to write code for them. They don't want to constantly go to Google. They don't want to write this over and over again. Even if you're really good and know exactly what to write, you can just be limited by the typing speed of your fingers sometimes. This might take you, 2-3 minutes to get correct, get all the formatting right, put in the right values, make sure you don't have any typos. Whereas in Mito, it's literally, if you know what you're doing, it's 10 seconds, it's a few clicks of a button. And I think it's a good point in the demo to mention that the code we're generating here is completely usable carried forward. And I think that's a really key thing as you're going from spreadsheets to Python, is to make sure that the code that you're writing is helpful further down in your notebook. You want to make sure that you're writing code that you can share with other people, that can last, that can be used to replay data, to replay analyses, things like that. So we really prioritize that with Mito. So here, if I run this cell, actually, first thing I'm going to do is rename this. Let's just rename this to pivot. So done that. And now, if you want to use the code that's generated below Mito, and you want to use that carried forward in new cells further down in your analysis, all you have to do is run this cell. So to do that, you can click this button here, or the shortcut is the Shift key and the Enter key on your keyboard at the same time. And then you'll see a little highlight happen, and that means the code has been effectuated. That means this code these edits have been made to the data frame, essentially. And so now, this pivot, or any of these data frames here, this one's called pivot, if I run this, we see that we create a real data frame in Mito out of a real data frame in Python in this notebook out of what we've done in Mito. So this Mito data frame now becomes a Jupyter data frame down here. So I really want to hammer home the point that everything we're doing in the Mito sheet here is editing real data frames that we can carry forward in our analysis. So, for example, there are some things you can't do in Mito, you can't do in Spreadsheet. Now, we want these things to be in Mito eventually, but they aren't currently. But so, you can't do machine learning models in Mito right now. At some point, we'd love for there to be a little button here where you could run some simple Mito models, maybe with PyCaret or something, and have it generate the PyCaret code for you. That would be great. Definitely something we're thinking about, I want to get to. But currently, Mito is more of the spreadsheet-based functionality. So how a lot of people use the tool is they'll do their data cleaning, their exploratory data analysis, their data transformations in Mito, and then they'll just quickly take all that code, run it, and then apply a machine learning model to the outputted data frame, or apply some NLP model or some really advanced visualizations to the outputted data frame. So what Mito allows people to do is go between spreadsheet view, spreadsheet interface, and Python pretty seamlessly. Like, we have lots of people who will use Mito, do some transformations, then run a machine learning model on Mito, take the output. Let's say the output looks something like this, some simple data frame, some grid. With this button here, any data frame you output, you can turn it back into a Mito sheet with a click of a button. So now I click this, and it takes that data frame and puts it back into Mito. We can keep editing it from there. So if I want to now apply a filter to the results of this ML model, just want to look for one's greater than 6, we get that, we get the code for that as well. So really want to accentuate that people go back and forth between Mito and Python, and Mito is, I think a lot of people, when a lot of people look at tools like Mito that are supposed to make Python easier for spreadsheet users, people will say, oh, well, like, does this make you worse at Python? Our answer is it really does not. A lot of people still get to learn the code, still are able to interact in a Python environment intelligently. I think it's a really key piece about these tools, and some of the other tools I'll show you as well. Like for Lux, for example, I think it's not taking away from your Python experience, it's just making it quicker. Lux being this generation tool I was talking about. Okay, so we have this pivot table. I'll show you how you could export the table back to the notebook essentially, and then continue working with it if you want to. We also can make the pivot table a little more complex. So I'm going to reopen the pivot menu. If you're on a pivot table and you reopen the pivot menu, you can continue to edit it. So I can add more values here. Let's say we want to do the high value and we want to do the mean. That we can compare these values, for example, and make a more complex pivot table. I'm going to come back to this Raman data. So reminder, we were in the Tesla data set, now we're in the Raman data set. Some of the really powerful transformations we have are with our spreadsheet functions. I think this is something that, even if you're not incredibly familiar with spreadsheets, if you're a Python user, this can still save you a lot of time. I think, at the high level, what Mito is really about, we often talk about it as a way to transition from spreadsheets to Python, just make Python faster for a lot of people. But the thing that we're trying to really build is bringing the best of spreadsheets and the best of Python together. There are some things that are really good in spreadsheets, which is like applying a formula to a column, that is not great. I mean, you can do it in Python, people do it all the time, but it's not a very good process. There are things that are visual interface we just think are better for it. And because it's generating the code, you don't lose any of that customizability that you get in the Python. So, a way to think about Mito, I think, as you leave today is, bringing together the best of both, and definitely helps with the transition. But we want people to continue using the tool, sort of just make it a good way to access Python generally, access data science. So, for example, one of the things I was talking about is a formula. So we have this brand column here. Let's add a column next to it. And we can use a ton of different spreadsheet formulas here. So this is all data wrangling stuff or data cleaning. So let's say I want to use my left function. I can pull out the first three letters of this, for example, here. So maybe you want to make a short key that represents what you have here. You can do that super simply. We could also add another column here. Let's say we want to use the length function. We want to get the length of these strings. These will all be threes. Maybe that's a bad example. Maybe let's take the length of this brand. Here we go. A really great way to take a string value and get some numerical context for it to operate on. The length function would be really helpful for that. Let's rename this to here. So again, as I come down here, we're going to get all the code for the things we listed. So here we added that new column using the left. Here we added this column called length. Again, this is the comment here has length in it, the name length in it, because that's what we named the column. And we'll come here and we'll get the length of that column. And now we have this length. Let's say we want to operate on that even more. I'm going to add another column, and let's do an if statement. So if this column is greater than 10, return 1, otherwise return is 0. There we go. 1 is 0. So now we created this helper column to denote for this brand column, is the length of the string more than 1, or more than 10 or less than 10. Any questions? We're going to do some more formula stuff. Any questions about these formulas or the pivot tables? I kind of went into both of them. Would love to hear. Would love to hear just questions or just generally your thoughts on what you're seeing. If you think this would be helpful for your experience in Python or spreadsheets, and would love to make this a little more conversational if people are into that. All right, cool. We'll keep going. Yeah, definitely. Please ask questions as we keep going. Okay. So I think the one thing to pick up on here, so we've created this length column here. And I think this is a good example of how you can use Mito to really ask questions of your data. So what we could do now is we have this ones and zeros. If I go here, I go to the value column, and I could see, okay, great. So we have 92 values that are greater. So sorry, 92 of these brand strings are greater than 10 characters, and 358 are less than 10. So I think that's a really good example of like how you can ask a really quick question of your data in Mito and just get an answer. So if you have the question, I want to know in this brand column, how many of the strings are greater than 10, how many of them less than 10? you can apply two formulas and do that. One thing I will note is that there's actually a simpler way of doing this. So let me undo a few steps. Okay. So we can use nested formulas as well. So I'm going to use an if statement here, and we'll say if length of the brand column is greater than 10, 1. So you can see now we can do it all in one thing, all one go, and we can get that really simple. And so if I come down here, we'll get that code right here. So a bit more optimized code that is ready to go. So that's a lot of like the string cleaning, asking questions of strings types of functions. One of the other things we have that's really powerful that people like is our date wrangling functionality. Something people would struggle with in spreadsheets also. Also in Python is dealing with dates can be really cumbersome, and Mito really tries to make that easier. So add a column here. As I showed you before, we have the day function, for example. So do that, we can pull the day out of each of the months. We could change this to the month out. We also have end of business month, end of month, start of business month. Some of the reasons we have these, just to get a little more industry specific, is for finance. So our biggest customers are some of the largest banks in the world are who we work with. We've helped transition thousands of analysts from Excel over to Python. One of the biggest banks that we've done is they have it's like a 6-day Python training course that everyone goes through, and 3 of those days are now not Python, but they're Mito instead. So Mito has become the go-to interface for Python for these organizations, and we're onboarding new ones all the time. But so these functions are really specific to finance use cases. So if any of you are out there working in the financial world, this might be more pertinent to you. But finance is one of the spaces specifically where we see these large data sets, bogged down by slow Excel, slow spreadsheets. And Mito is a really great way for those people to tap into. And then obviously, of course, people in the financial world have a lot of experience with the spreadsheet interface. Those Excel wizards are there, and they get a lot of great use out of it. So we really try to make the financial use case one that works really well in the tool, as well as others. But definitely wanted to highlight that with these functions. Let me close this. So that was some of our financial data sets. I'll come here, if I go to the documentation here, if you go to our documentation, docs.tramway.io, you'll get everything about the tool. I'll go to the, we have a column formula, here, spreadsheet formulas, and if you come here to the formula reference, you can see all the formulas we have. So Excel has, they're adding in all the time. We estimate, let's say about 450 formulas. We don't have all of them, but we do have what we've identified as all the ones that people really tend to use. Concatenate, really popular one. We can run correlations between 2 columns. Date value, again, some of that data, some of that date manipulation stuff. Exponential, fill NaN, things like that. What was I going to say? Yeah, we've done a good job. We think a good job of working with our community to identify what the most important functions are. One thing that's nice about the way we built the tool is that it's really easy to add new functions. So a really common interface we have, interaction we have with our users is they'll say, "Oh, could you add this function for us?" And we're like, "Sure," and it takes a few minutes. So that's a lot of the community interaction we have. I think what that touches on really is like the value of building an open source company, which I could talk a lot more about if people have questions. But we definitely think that building a tool that is really instructed by the community's problems that they're facing is incredibly important. And someone just sent me a LinkedIn message who's I think in the audience right now, who said some really nice stuff. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's what I'll respond to you after the call. Yeah, so definitely want to highlight that. Would love for you all to become members of the open source community, give us feedback, contribute. Just in terms of a business sense, all our biggest customers have started, these huge financial institutions started as open source users. So the organization, oh, can you guys still hear me? Just got a notification that my mic changed. Okay, I think we're good. Let me know if my audio goes out. Yes, okay, sweet. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ivana. So yeah, so definitely, encourage you all to engage with open source companies, especially in the Python space. We really believe that open source is the way of the future. That doesn't mean that those companies might not have some proprietary or enterprise level offerings, but in a lot of those cases, it's the paying enterprises that allow the company to keep an open source version for the community. So they're the enterprises sort of subsidize the community in a way and allow the open source companies to build really great products. That's definitely what we're trying to do. Okay, let's hop back into Mito. So I want to, so we were talking about formulas. I want to come back here to some more of our transformations. So we've done pivoting, unpivoting. I won't go into the example, but it's essentially like you can take a pivot table style data frame and bring it back into the base data set in a way, if that makes sense. A few specific questions about that. It's not the most used feature. You can just reach out to me. Happy to walk you through that. Here we can deduplicate data frames. So I don't think we have any duplicate. Oh, we might. So like, for example, let me see. Okay, so this month column, for example. So what we can do here is we're deciding what data frame we're going off. We're going to go off the demo one. We can decide what duplicates do we want to keep. Do you want to keep, so if you have 3 duplicate entries, do you want to keep the first one? Do you want to keep the last one? Or do you want to keep none of them? You could delete, with this setting here, you could delete any data that had a duplicate. So only use values that were completely unique from the start. And then we can also decide what columns we want to do duplicate on. So I am going to check off all of them except month. So I want to deduplicate on month. But why is it saying, oh, oops, yeah, and date. So I only want to drop the duplicates a month. So when we click this, we should have 1 entry for June, 1 entry for, or 1 entry for 6, 1 entry for 7, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll do that. And there we go. We see we've dropped 1,600 rows. This is not, I wouldn't recommend you necessarily to duplicate like on this on a month. That wouldn't make a ton of sense. I'm just sort of showing you the example. But so we've dropped those duplicates and now we have 1 entry for the whole data set from each row. And if I come down here, I'll see that we generated the code for that. I think, so like one thing to point out here is like, this code here is like cumbersome. And as we get to graphing, you'll really see how cumbersome a lot of it can be. But this is some cumbersome code. This here is, it's a simple line of code, but a lot of people just don't know this command. So you still have to go to Google, Stack Overflow, go on YouTube, go to tutorial, reach out to someone like me, ask a question. Like in Mito, it's really just about, even if it's the code you're done, even if you're not generating 10 lines of code, it's just a much quicker way to do these small things, especially if you're doing them over and over again. We really find that, again, this is, even more for like just advanced Python users, like they spend so much time massaging the code, and Mito just generates clean code from the start. So, I definitely want to get it across that Mito is for new users coming from spreadsheets, but also for really advanced users. So if you're an advanced Python user, people who are, tell them about Mito, because I think we've just seen over and over again how powerful it can be for these types of users. Okay, I'll close this. So here our data set's not in a great place. So probably what I want to do is undo this. And now we're back at all the normal data set, which is great. So unpivot, merge. So I want to show these quickly. So merging, this is really powerful for spreadsheet users. So here we have different types of joins. We can do a VLOOKUP. This is a VLOOKUP type join, left join, right join, inner join, outer join. We can do unique and left and unique and right. I think I want to highlight, so just you can see the descriptions here. I think most of you are probably familiar with the different types of joins probably, but again, okay, so DF4, we've done a VLOOKUP here. This isn't going to work perfectly because these data sets don't exactly match up super well. We could probably join on this month column. I'll just show you an example of what the code looks like down here. So I think this is a good example of like, oh, sorry, this right here, actually. This is a good example of code that even if you're really good with Python, people struggle to do this merging code. You spend a lot of time writing this out. So this is a good way of doing that right here. So let me go back. So yeah, so we do types of joins: VLOOKUPs, left join, right join, inner join, outer join, unique and left, unique and right, all these different types of things. It could be really helpful. The unique and left, unique and right. So what that will do is if you have two data sets, it'll say, okay, what are the values that only exist in this one data set and not in the other? Or the you can write, or what are the values exist in this data set but not the other? This is really powerful. We work with one of the world's largest asset managers, and what we're helping them do with this, for example, is create data checks on their data. So they need to be sure that when they have these like two data sets come in, that for example, the addresses in the data sets are the same. And Mito, through this, with a click of a button, really just helps them print out a report of what are all the addresses that don't match up. And then they can go do the data validation there. So data validation, I think, is something that it's a kind of workflow that exists kind of halfway between spreadsheets and Python. It's not something you think about in data science too much. It's not machine learning. It's just literally checking for data quality, to make sure that there's no errors. And Mito allows you to do that really simply and sort of bring what is sometimes a part spreadsheet and part Python workflow together all into one interface here inside the Python notebook. So if things like that come to mind, where it's like, oh, my people at my company are doing workflows that are fragmented between Python and between spreadsheets, and I'd love to consolidate that. And maybe that fragmentation is happening where one user is when we see both of these. So that fragmentation might happen where it's one user who is doing part of their work in spreadsheets and part of their work in Python, and Mito helps them to bring that together. The other way we see that is maybe there are two teams, or maybe the whole team, and part of that team is using spreadsheets and part of that team is using Python, or two teams, one spreadsheet team, one Python team, and there's a lot of translation going back and forth. Mito can be used, and tools like Mito, a lot of great open source tools can be used as sort of a translation layer where someone who's a spreadsheet analyst can do something really quickly, mock up what the edits they want to make in Python, and then send the code to a more advanced data scientist as sort of a prototype. And that advanced data scientist can say, okay, interesting, I see what you want to do here. Let me make a few edits and let me put this into production. Or maybe it's already ready to go and be put into production. So there's a communication gap that happens between spreadsheet users and Python users at lots of organizations that we've helped a lot of teams and companies cut down on. Whereas if some of you out there are in a more management level over teams, that's a big thing that I think a lot of people don't consider that Mito can be really helpful for. And we'd be happy to talk to you more about that in terms of how we could help you there. Great. So what was I saying? Okay, so yeah, so I wanted to mention the merges and just show you that quickly. Again, I think this is a good example of code similar to pivot tables that takes a long time to write, can be cumbersome. In Mito, it's much quicker. So if you're new to Python, as I said, I'll say this again. If you're new to Python, if you're advanced in Python, encourage you to try out Mito and these interfaces like it. Let me pause for a sec here. And any questions about some of the transformation stuff we've shown? The last thing we're going to get into is graphing and formatting. We're burning time here. I'll say it again. Because we only have like 25-ish minutes left, 22 minutes left. If anyone wants to share their experience with going between spreadsheets and Python, or trying to learn spreadsheets coming from a Python environment, this is the last time I'll say it, although you're welcome to jump in at any time. But would love to just hear from anyone out there if this is something they struggle with. Maybe you think Mito isn't helpful at all. Would love to hear that. I've been on calls where people tell me this is a stupid idea. I'd love to talk to those people. But if not, I'll just keep going because there's definitely more I can show you. Cool. Looks like we're good. Okay. Let's keep going. So I wanted to hop into now the last few things. So we've talked about data ingestion, We talked about data wrangling, cleaning, using formulas. We talked about transformations, pivots, merges, etc. Let's move into some graphing. So graphing is something a lot of people struggle with in Python. If you're coming from a spreadsheet, if you're coming from Python, it takes a ton of time to do. And Mito makes that really simple. So the code we've been generating before has been Pandas code. The code we're going to generate now with our graphing is Plotly code. So Plotly, really great open source package. I'm friends with the founder CEO. I've done a lot of good partnership work with him. He's great, and it's probably the most popular in the most popular Python packages for visualizations. Definitely for interactive visualizations, it's the most popular. Highly recommend using Plotly, and Dash is their enterprise offering if you're interested in that. So I am going to make a graph off of this pivot table here. So again, we have the months here. This is some Tesla data, and this is the mean float, the mean for this is the mean of the high values for each of these months, and this is the mean of the open values for each of these months. So we're going to go to graphing. We'll click graph here, and we'll start with a bar chart. So the x-axis is going to be the month. The y-axis will do high mean. Okay, so we have a question. Here we go. So this person said, maybe you already mentioned at the beginning, but does Mito only serve to simplify writing Python in Jupyter? How complex functions can you do, and how well does it cope with large data sets? For example, to select only latest transaction of a customer and in a transaction table. Okay, so a few questions there. I'll try to answer all these quickly. So does Mito only work in Jupyter? Currently, Mito works in the Jupyter suite, which is Jupyter Notebook, Jupyter Lab, Jupyter Hub. We've also had it work in environments like SageMaker, for example. If you're looking for Mito to work in things like VS Code, PyCharm, Spider, those are things we can help you do. It takes a little customization work on our end. The instructions are on our website are for downloading inside Jupyter. But I will say that you can access Jupyter in a lot of these enterprise environments. So like SageMaker has a Jupyter offering, Domino Data Lab has a Jupyter offering. I think Databricks has Jupyter offerings. So you can access Mito in a lot of these environments. But if you want to do it in something like a Google Colab, PyCharm, Spider, VS Code, you can just reach out to me and I can try and help you set that up. We've done some customization work with people before. How well does it cope with large data sets? I did answer this, but I will answer it again because it's an important point, which is very well. So if you can fit your data set inside a data frame, which is, let's say, up to 15 million lines of row, obviously it depends how many columns you have, but to be generous, it should work fine. We have people who are connecting Mito to Snowflake databases and pulling in their entire ERP data set to analyze things. And then, for example, to select only latest transaction of a customer in a transaction table. So you could do that. You would use the dates functions to find the most recent date, and then you for each customer could I won't have time to show you that example right now, but yeah, you could just get the most recent date for each customer and then filter down to that and select from there. But that was an anonymous participant. But if you want to reach out to me, or I'll put my email and stuff at the end, then please do. And happy to help you through that. So let's go back to graphic quickly. Okay, so we're back in the graph. So yeah, we have these chart types here. So I can also add another axis. We'll do open mean here. Nice. So we can get, we can do multiple axes here. We can get pretty interesting and nice charts. So I can also, so this is a bar chart. I could make this a line chart, scatter plot, histogram, bunch of ECDF. To be honest, I've never used ECDF. Maybe you will. And then we can style this as well. So I can put some titles here. We'll just call this demo for the graph. We'll see that update there. I can decide if I want to display these axes or not. I can do different axis transformations. We'll keep these as they are, but we could do linear, log, date, categorical. I can get rid of or keep the legend. Let's turn the legend off. That should go away. There we go. Grid lines, we see these in the back. If I remove these, we'll see the grid lines go away. Yep. And then we can do some facet styling for a little bit more advanced stuff. Colors as well, super popular. We can customize the color of these charts. So I'm going to make the background. This is not going to look pretty, but let's just make it yellow so it stands out. There we go. don't recommend sending this chart to anyone in your organization, but you get the idea. We can use range slider. So, this color is bad, but you can make really beautiful looking charts. People use these for presentation. Just use the colors. Or if you want to use your organization specific colors, you can put in the specific codes if you want. So if your organization has a color palette, you could use that really easily and just put it in there. Oh, oops, let's close the ref. Okay, now we're back. So that was the styling. There's a few other things I didn't show you, but the last step here, which is important, is the exporting. So, Mito is really about doing your analysis, but not locking you into it. So we want you to be able to take that analysis and share with people what you've done or carry it forward in the notebook, as I showed you earlier. So here I can copy the code. So I'm going to click copy code. So the important thing you want to do is the graph is built on the edits that you've made to your data frames before. So when you copy the graph code, the first thing you want to do is you want to run the code that is generated under your Mito sheet. So, and then I'm just going to add a new cell here. So you can add new cells with this click plus button here. And now I've copied it. So it's copied it to my clipboard. When I hit copy that, and here we'll do paste. So this is a great example. I think this is the best example for this is the moment maybe I'm most proud of showing people because it shows just how much complex code you can write so quickly with Mito. This, I challenge any of you to write this in less, excuse me. I challenge any of you to write this in less than 5 minutes. I will PayPal you money if you're able to do it. But in Mito, it's just a few seconds. So I'll run that. And then we can actually use this chart in our notebook. So I can, because this is a Plotly, I can zoom in. If I double click, zoom out. So we can really make nice interactive charts. And we get these like little guides here which show us specific data points. I think this is just a really good example of how much code you can make so quickly with Mito. And so again, if you're a spreadsheet user, obviously this is faster than maybe learning all this syntax yourself. But if you're an advanced Python user or an intermediate, middle of the road Python user, really urge you to try this out. And I think it'll save you a lot of time and just make using Python a more pleasant experience. Again, this goes back to that point of bringing the best of spreadsheets and the best of Python together is, there are some things that just are better in a visual way. That's why a lot of people like spreadsheets in general. But and the thing that Python lacks is that visual nature. So we hope to give you that. Like for creating a graph, you want to see your graph as you're creating it. You don't want to just write a bunch of code, then print it out and see what it looks like. You want to understand what your chart is while you're doing it and edit and make a lot of tweaks. But obviously, so that's a deficit of Python that we try to make better through the spreadsheet interface through Mito. But then obviously spreadsheets have deficits as well, which is like hard to replay things, hard to access large data sets, hard to understand a record of what you've done. And so we try to bring in the Python aspect to allow you to do that. So it really is about bringing both the best of both of those spreadsheets and Python together. So here what we can do is we can copy this code. I won't show you this example, but you can copy the code that creates an HTML file. So you can actually send someone an interactive version of this chart that they could use, put on a web page, go through. And then we can also download it as a PNG. So if you want to put it, this is really common. You've a very common workflow is someone ingests data, wrangles, makes pivot tables, visualizes that, and then they want to download that as a PNG and put it in a email, put it in a PowerPoint, put it in a Word doc, whatever. You can just do that. And I don't know if you can see this on my screen, but it just downloaded this plot. So a lot of graphing. Didn't have time to go through it all. The final two things I want to show you here before I'd love to just take the last 10 minutes and just chat a little bit. So we can what was I saying? We can format these data frames. So super helpful. So I'll go to the formatting here. We can set data frame colors. So really quickly, if I just want to click and these are just some pre-recommended data sets, for example, or some data stylings, for example. But we can also set our own colors. So I could set this to green. I could set the text color to, this is for the header. I could, in the data frame, I could set the text color to green, for example. We'll see that it actually does every other value, so it makes it a little bit more readable. So you can, style this as much as you like. And I want to come down here and show you the code for this because if you come down here, oh, sorry, here. This is a good example of like, this is hard to write. I would not be able to write this. Like, this is incredibly annoying code to write. And so Mito just makes that really simple. We know people who don't do any formatting in their data frames because they're like, there is no way I'm trying to write this code. So like, it is just not fun code to write. So Mito just makes that super simple. And the last thing on the formatting side is we have conditional formatting as well. So you can add rules here. I won't go in, but you could add, highlight based on column value, et cetera. And I think that that is really helpful if you want to sort of present out of your notebook. A lot of people present out of notebooks, and you might want to say, use conditional formatting to make your presentation, make your points pop a little bit better. Also, we can do things like, so we can increase and decrease decimal places here. Again, we are generating code for these things that is appearing here. Here. And we can change the, like if we want to change these to like accounting, for example, or whatever. And then last thing, sorry, two more things. We can export all this stuff back to CSV or Excel. So a lot of people take a large data set, bring it into Mito, work with it much more quickly than they could in Excel, and then bring it back to Excel because they maybe need to send it to their colleagues in Excel as an Excel file, or there's something they want to do in Excel. Maybe they have certain macros they want to use in Excel. Totally fine. Mito is really built about trying to operate, going between Python and spreadsheets pretty seamless. We hope you can do that. Okay, just the last thing I want to show you here is just some of the like shortcutty interoperability things you can do. So like, for example, we can highlight across all these data sets. And I could Control C this. We see this kind of highlighted now, and you can copy and paste data out of your data frame back into Excel or into an email or something like that. This is something that used to be really hard to do. You used to have to go write code to export it. In Mito, Control, copy, paste. You could Control, copy a whole column. You could copy 5 columns, bring them all back into Excel. So copy and paste data out of Mito into Excel or into an email or something other, some sort of, or Google Sheets. Really simple with Mito. The other thing you can do is, okay, we have these strings, so we can do bulk transformations, so bulk data type changes. So we have, these are 3 strings. Let's make them all, I guess that's actually not going to work because we probably want those as strings, but let's make, well, if I come back here. Okay, these are all floats. These are floats. I can data type, make them integers, just like that. And we'll come down here. And we generated the code for that here. So again, you didn't have to write this line of code over and over 4 times. You took 2 seconds and you did it. So I'll stop there. That is Mito at a high level. It is a spreadsheet interface for Python. We've been working on this for a little while. We're working with some of the largest companies in the world to help them bridge the gap between spreadsheets and Python, take Excel users and bring them to Python, but also make Python users faster, give them a visual interface to make their coding a better experience. We believe that Python is the future of data science, specifically open source Python. And Python is incredibly powerful, but we're just trying to build some interfaces around that make using it a better experience and help support the transition from Excel and lots of other tools to Python that is already happening. And for the people already using Python, just making their lives happier, hopefully by giving them a faster way to write code and things like that. Would love to hear any questions, thoughts. I know I showed you a lot there. I guess I want to go to our documentation, and you can install Mito with these commands. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. And then maybe Alex, if you could send it out to everyone. Please email me with any questions, or friend me on LinkedIn. I think my name is Jacob Diamond Reivich on LinkedIn. You can LinkedIn DM me, send me an email. Always happy to help. Share Mito with your friends and colleagues. We're always trying to spread the word. But yeah, we're a new company, and we're really excited with the growth we've seen so far, but we're trying to expand that as well, and really proud about being an open source company as well. We think that's a really important thing to do. But any questions or thoughts, would love to hear, or just anything I can help you with. would love to hear for the next 7 minutes, or we can always just chill.
Sorry, Jacob. Jake, sorry. Jake.
Hi.
Hi, Jake. No, Jacob. Jacob, sorry.
No, either's good. Yeah, whatever you want. I'll take both.
Okay, because I saw an email, Jake, and in the title of your speech is Jacob. Yes.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah. People, we're all friends now, so call me Jake. That's what's in my email.
Okay, no problem. So my question is, can I transfer your created code to some other application? Probably yes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you can just copy and paste it, bring it over to VS Code. You can copy into Google Colab. We have lots of users who do that. We definitely want to make Mito available in those Google Colab, VS Code, PyCharm eventually. Jupyter is the most common environment, so that's where we started. But that's what we're doing. The other thing is also from an enterprise level, we find that Jupyter Hub is really common for large enterprises to have thousands of users accessing Python. It's a pretty manageable system, and it's completely on-prem, which a lot of especially financial firms really like. So yeah, we're definitely supportive of that. And but yeah, you can just.
I use Visual Studio Code, Microsoft Visual Studio Code usually. So
okay, yeah. So unfortunately, currently, I mean, there have been a few people who have been able to make it work. And if you want to try, and if you send me an email, I can definitely try and help you do this, who've been able to use some of Mito in VS Code. We recommend using it in Jupyter, but you could just copy and paste the code into your notebook in VS Code, and it should work fine. Cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Definitely reach out if you need more questions on that. Great. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'll give you the 4 minutes back. But thanks a ton for having me, and hope to be back next year. And yeah, please reach out with questions on email or LinkedIn. And I think you have our website as well. So check it out, and hope you get a chance to use Mito. Thanks a ton, everybody.
Thank you, Jake, for the great presentation.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake. It's nice software. I think probably many people don't see what is the real power on this stuff. So
Thank
nice
you.
software, really nice.
Appreciate it. All right. Have a good one, everybody.